Hey everyone, it is George Couros. Welcome back to another episode of the Innovator's Mindset podcast, a solo podcast. And this is actually airing to you, and I'm recording this on June 27th, 2025. And what I'm going to do to you, I'm going to try something a little bit different that I've done before. Maybe I've done this before, but kind of going back to something. I actually wrote a blog post talking about what I'm going to share today. And I'm going to read it to you, but I'm going to just offer some behind the scenes insights as they come to my mind. And this is based on a post I recently wrote called What Moving Taught Me About Growth. This is the week of the 3-year anniversary of myself and my family moving from Edmonton, Alberta in Western Canada to Orlando, Florida. And it has been a really amazing move, a really amazing opportunity to be here. One of the things that I really appreciate is I actually probably am speaking and traveling as much as I ever have, but I'm home more, which is nice. Just is one of the reasons we moved here is easier to travel, especially because most of my work was in the United States, and I really appreciate that. But it's actually, there's also been obstacles. There's been a lot of stuff that has challenged me, and I wanted to share that because like a lot of times we just kind of like, oh, this is, everything's good, but it's not, but it doesn't mean you can't make it better. And so I wrote some of my reflections down, and I wanted to read them to you. But the top of the post, because and the reason I think this is actually important, I always kind of feel uncomfortable. It's like the A&E biography of George Couros. I don't think that's what I'm doing this at all. But I'm sharing this with you all because it is really important to take advantage of new opportunities, take advantage of change, and that it can still be hard and it can still be a struggle. So many of you right now are maybe going in from one position to another. Maybe you're going into one situation to another, whatever it might be. And so just some things that I've learned, I just wrote this. I don't even know where, because I do write quite a bit, and sometimes I post this, sometimes I don't, is that we always talk about hindsight being 2020, and that kind of sucks because it's like, that means we have to go through crappy stuff to like kind of understand what we could have done better. But what I'm trying to do is share some of my hindsight so that you have the foresight to make a better decision or to actually navigate things maybe in a way I didn't really understand when I was doing this. So that's why I wanted to share this post with you. And at the beginning of the post, I share this quote that a change of scenery doesn't mean you'll change your routine, but it gives you a blank slate to become the best version of yourself you always wanted to be. And that is something that I really, really strive to do. Going back like even further in my life, I think this is where I ultimately learned it. I went from one school district to another, and it felt like a desperate move at the time. I know I've talked about this. I just really hated teaching. I hated education, but I didn't know what else to do. So I basically said, I'm going to give it one more year. But then I go into a new district, and I said, like, look, nobody knows me here. Nobody knows anything about me, how I started in one place, which I actually felt was limiting to me, because even no matter how much I try to grow in one place, they were always going to see me, and maybe this is my own perception, as what I was when I entered the place. And so I felt, listen, I'm going to a new place. I'm going to recreate myself because I have a blank slate. And so I knew how beneficial it was, because I went from like, I hate teaching, I hate being in education, to I can't imagine doing anything else. I really love this profession and the work that I get to do to support it. And so that was kind of my mentality, is that, I'm not just moving different cities, different even countries, and just expecting things just to happen. It is about what I do with this opportunity, right? That really matters. If I do the same things that I've always done in a new place, I'm going to end up not being any better, but in a warmer temperature. I guess it would have been what would have happened. So I do want to share this. So I will start with just reading some of the stuff that I wrote about. It was 3 years ago this week that we decided to move from Western Canada to Orlando, Florida. I remember getting into the car with my 2 dogs, Odom and Cooper, and driving 5 days across North America for no other reason than I did not want to put them on a plane at their age. On the trip, every morning before the drive, every night upon arriving at a new hotel, I would take them for a walk. This is a new routine for all of us, as I was not much of a walker in the Canadian cold. And in those 5 days, their tails would be wagging in anticipation of that walk. A new routine was formed, and it was something we looked forward to every morning and night. aside. I remember the kind of going through this for probably 4 or 5 months. I knew I was about to do this drive. I knew this, and it was very daunting to me because I know it sounds so gross, but my dogs were used to like kind of go and poop on their own. They didn't poop and pee on walks and stuff like this. So I was like, this is going to be really horrible for them. They're going to have a really hard time. So I dreaded it. And then it finally got there, and it was like the best thing that happened. So a lot of times we spend time worrying about things that actually end up being better for us. And so all that time didn't need to worry, but it was so much better. So just a little perspective about that. When my family left Canada, Odom had diabetes, and it seemed like he was in his last days. Within a couple of weeks of arriving in Florida, he was stumbling and not doing well. We rushed him to the vet, and the eventual prognosis was the temperature in Florida had actually improved his health, and the change in climate led to an overdosing of insulin. After adjusting the dose, he would experience little bursts of energy, much like a puppy, and that alone made the change feel worthwhile. That was, I think, I would tell you, like, I remember praying that please Odom make it to Florida. Please Odom to make it to Florida. And then we finally made it, and I was so happy about it. But then his life got better, and I was like, this is justified the move. And, you know, it's like, I guess why older people move to Florida, it's good for their joints. But then in 2024, and this is last year, Odom passed away from cancer at the beginning of the year. That same year, Cooper passed away from cancer as well in November. Both of their passings were different, but incredibly hard on me. I feel like I lost peace in my heart, and I've learned you never get over the death of something you love, but you are definitely forever changed. That year, I experienced significant professional success, but struggled personally. And why I think that's a really important thing to share. A lot of times we see people excelling in certain aspects of their life, and we think everything is going really well. But, you know, there was so much that I struggled with, and I just did my best to show up. And so we often share our highlights. And, you know, by the way, I was never shy about sharing what I was struggling with. And I think, weirdly enough, that connected with me a lot of people that maybe connected with me because they're going through something similar, or people who saw me as a human being, not someone who just writes blog posts and posts stuff on Instagram, right? So I think that was a really important lesson for me. It was a year of contrast, accomplishments in my work life, but also some of the deepest personal challenges I had faced. One thing that was different about me compared to how I felt in the past is that even though there were many days I didn't want to get out of bed, I still did. I went through the motions until the motions went through me. It was in that year that I first started to wonder, was moving a good idea? And I do remember that. I was really strong. I'm like, was this a good idea? Like, did I screw things up? And I think, you know, I've shared this before. I've dealt for years with anxiety, depression, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. It's part of who I am. But I know I've gotten better at saying, like, there's little things that I know if I stay in bed, it never gets better. If I just kind of stay down, I got to move. But I still was struggling with the idea that we moved. But then you realize that no matter where you go and no matter how promising the opportunity seems, challenges are inevitable. When you face those obstacles, it can feel incredibly challenging. So then you start to take stock of your life and say, this is painful, but there are so many things I have now I didn't before. I know it could be worse. There are many days that it couldn't be much better. And I proudly wear my Orlando Magic hat. There's little things I do here. Even though I was thinking, wow, this is really horrible, there's so many things I dreamed of doing when I was a kid that I currently do here. And it is pretty amazing. In those moments, a lot of times we actually, something really bad happens in the moment, and we decide that the moment is the always, but as opposed to recognizing it as the moment. I look at the promise I've made to myself, and the closer I've gone to keeping them, the better I feel. There are things like this: be present when I'm at work and when I'm with family and friends. So wherever I am, that's where I am. I'm not at work thinking about my family the same way I'm not with my family thinking about work. Get outside as much as possible. I cannot tell you how much that has done wonders for me. And no matter how hard yesterday was, go again tomorrow. A little trick I do, by the way, if I have a crappy day, I just go to bed super early because I'm like, listen, if I'm on a crappy day, we're going to make this as short as possible, and we'll just start again tomorrow. Thinking like that hasn't necessarily made me happier, but has made me feel more purposeful. As it often happens, I have no idea where I was going when I started writing this, other than wanting to evaluate the last 3 years and the decision to move. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, which isn't surprising when you live so close to Disney World. And here are my biggest lessons. Surround yourself with people who make you better and whom you know you can count on. Do your best to treat every person doing a job as the most important person in any organization, and they will go out of their way to do the same. The more grateful I become for what I have, the more that seems to come into my life. I think that is, shout out to Lainey Rowell. I think Lainey's really had an impact on me about talking about gratitude and really kind of understand that. And so here's the part where I share, hopefully, some advice with you. This would be my advice to anyone making a significant move in their life, whether it is another city, job, or situation. Change the scenery doesn't mean you will change your routine, but it gives you a blank slate to become the version of yourself you always wanted to be. My dogs lived long enough to ensure that when I moved, I was always willing to try something new that I hadn't done before. Although it hasn't always made things easy, it has pushed me to be better. A walk every day and every night with your best friends could put things into perspective, as long as you're willing to look. That is, I think that to me is so, when you look for solutions, you find them. When you look for problems, you find them. And I will tell you, I gravitate to people who are opportunity focused. People that complain, I always caution people that if someone's job is to find problems, they'll find them. And they're very hard to work with, right? But do we look for solutions? And when you look, whatever you're looking for, I promise you'll find. So make sure you're looking for the good stuff. And then at the end of this post, I share, ultimately, it is not the place that defines us, but rather how willing we are to grow when we arrive. No matter your situation, no matter what you're doing. And here's the other thing too. Sometimes we don't go to a new job. We don't go, but there's little things. Like, for example, you might not go to a new job, but you might get a new boss. So if you do that, what are you going to do with that? What's that impression you're going to make, right? You might actually be the boss. You might get new employees. What impression are you going to make? What are you going to do with that new opportunity? Are you going to go to what you've always done? Or are you going to try to create that best version of yourself? And so with all the uncertainty, and I look back and I do really love where I am. And I do love the opportunities I have. And I do love it. I can't imagine living anywhere else, but I know this is something I've learned before, that we often, the places that we believe we can live forever are often temporary. So I'm always up for change, but what am I going to do with it? How am I going to leverage this? So I want to share this to you because I always want to kind of take stock and see what I'm doing. I think I did this last couple of years, just talking about, some reflections of the past year. And like I said, last year was where I started to question, why would I do that? Why would I move here because of all the turmoil and struggle in 2024? But I'll tell you this too, and I'll give you a good perspective. When my dogs passed away, kind of being in that space with them when they both passed, all that pain you feel, and there's that little moment where you're like, I don't know if I could ever do this again because it's so horrible to hear. And then you think, like, in that moment you feel pain, and because memory, sometimes the moment you believe becomes the whole thing. God, those dogs brought me joy, and the struggles I've had, yeah, I get it, but there's so much that's brought me joy. And when you look for it, you find it. And so I just want to share that with you. I hope this is a different way. And, I'm all about trying new things. Hopefully you appreciated this. If you like the way I did this, let me know. I'd love to hear from you, whether you comment, email me, reach out to me, because I hope that through some of the struggles I've had, some of the hindsight I'm now sharing, it will give you the foresight to find what you need in your life. Anyways, have a wonderful day. Thanks for all you do. Take care.